It started as a stupid dare. "You won't do it," Kyle said, his voice echoing off the crumbling concrete walls of the old subway access tunnel. It was past midnight, and the five of us stood at the rusted gate just past the fence break behind Monroe Station. The place hadn't been operational for decades. Everyone in town had heard the stories: collapsing tunnels, train cars sealed shut mid-renovation, workers who went in and didn't come back out. Of course, we didn't believe any of that. Not really. I flicked my flashlight on and adjusted my backpack. "Let's just do a lap through and come back out." 10 minutes. "Unless the mole people get us," Bree muttered, smirking, but I saw her hand tighten on Max's arm. The gate was barely hanging by a hinge, so Kyle just yanked it open. The sound it made was terrible, like the world exhaling through rusted lungs. We stepped inside, the darkness swallowing the city noise behind us. The air changed immediately, cooler, heavy with damp and dust. Old graffiti peeled like skin from the tiled walls. The tracks had long been stripped, but the groove where they once lay still guided us forward. I kept telling myself we'd just find some old junk and come back up laughing. Another dumb teenage night, logged into memory as harmless rebellion. But then we found the train. It sat in the dark like it had been waiting. Not crashed, not derailed. Just sitting in a side tunnel, untouched by time. The windows were fogged, the metal streaked with grime, but otherwise it looked new. Wrongly new. Like it had no business being there. "Holy crap," Max whispered. "This isn't on any of the maps. Is it even real?" Bree touched the side. Her fingers came away clean. Without thinking, I tried the nearest door. It hissed open. That's when things started to feel off. I turned to the others. "We go in, check it out, then leave." 10 minutes. Kyle laughed, already stepping aboard. I hesitated for one more second, then followed him inside. The moment all five of us were in the car, the doors slammed shut. Lights blinked on. Pale, green-tinted fluorescence. The whole train shuddered like it had been holding its breath. And then we started moving. Not toward the station. We didn't even feel the turn. Just a sudden, smooth acceleration, away. The tracks ahead were unlit, endless, and as we looked out the window, something became horribly clear. This wasn't any route on Earth. The train hummed quietly beneath our feet, the low sound too consistent, too perfect. No jerks. No stops. Just this fluid motion into darkness. "Okay, what the hell is going on?" Bree's voice cracked as she yanked at the door handle. It didn't budge. "Emergency brake," I said, already scanning the wall panel. Max found it first, bright red, behind a plastic cover. He smashed the cover with his elbow and yanked it down. Nothing happened. The train didn't even flinch. "Guys?" Jules whispered. She was at the window, pressing her forehead to the glass. "I don't think this is the tunnel anymore." I stepped beside her. Outside, the concrete walls were gone. What replaced them wasn't right. It was like we were sliding through some massive void lined with jagged, flickering fragments of light, like broken TV screens caught between static and signal. Some showed places. Others showed people. But none of them looked back. Until one did. Just a flash. Less than a second. But I swear, I saw a face staring at me. Pale. Too close. Pressed right up against the other side of the glass, even though there was nothing but tunnel wall there a moment before. Then it was gone. "We need to get off," I said. "We need to get off right now." The lights in the car flickered. Not a typical power flicker, more like indecision. For a moment, the lights dimmed into a sickly blue, casting shadows in places that had no source. The windows turned black. The reflection in the glass no longer matched our movements. I lifted my hand. The reflection didn't. "Don't look at the windows," Kyle said, voice tight. "Just don't." We staggered toward the back door of the car, hoping maybe we could pass through to another, maybe find a manual release, an emergency hatch, something. Jules screamed. The lights had flickered again. She wasn't standing with us anymore. She was outside the train, running to keep up with us. Her hands pounding on the glass, mouth open in a scream we couldn't hear. We turned as one. She was there, still inside the car, eyes wide, silent, shaking her head. But in the reflection, she was falling behind. And the further the train moved, the more the inside version of Jules began to twitch. Like something else was wearing her skin. We bolted into the next car without speaking, instinct yanking us forward like the words couldn't form fast enough to matter. The connecting door was heavier than it should have been, like it didn't want to open, but we forced it, one shoulder at a time, shoving past the weight of whatever this was. Inside, the second car was completely different. No rows of seats. Just a long, narrow corridor lined with mirrors. Dozens of them. Tall, thin, and perfectly clean despite the rot staining the corners of the car. No smudges. No cracks. But something about them was off. They didn't reflect us. They reflected someone else. "Why are they smiling?" Max asked, inching toward one of the mirrors. He was right. The figures inside looked like us, same clothes, same posture, but they were grinning. Too wide. Unblinking. Standing perfectly still as we walked past. When I moved, my reflection moved differently, delayed by a second, then two. Then it stopped entirely, just watching. And then it waved. Not at me. At someone behind me. I turned. No one was there. A coldness washed over me, not like fear, colder, older. The kind that came from realizing you already missed your chance to escape. "Don't stop," I said, grabbing Bree's arm. "Just keep walking. Don't look back." Jules wasn't moving. She stood before one of the mirrors, trembling, her eyes locked on her reflection. "It's my bedroom," she whispered. "What?" "My room. I can see it in the mirror. That's my stuff. My bed. My wall." The rest of us closed in behind her. Sure enough, her reflection was gone. The mirror now showed a grainy, distorted version of a small bedroom, blankets on the floor, posters crooked on the wall, a stuffed bear lying face down on the bed. Except there was someone under the bed. A long, thin hand slowly crept out and gripped the floor. Jules backed away. So did the hand. It retreated like it had felt her move. The image shimmered and returned to her reflection, smiling. We moved on, forcing ourselves to the end of the corridor. The last mirror looked black at first, like it was covered. But as we passed, it followed us. The darkness inside the mirror turned with us, tracking our movements. Then, it tapped. A single, soft knock from the other side of the glass. Tap. Tap. Then silence. The next door opened without effort. We didn't look back. The third car was pitch black. No overhead lights. No emergency strip. Just a total absence, like light itself had been sucked out. We stood in the doorway, frozen, breathing hard in the silence. And then we heard it. A soft, rhythmic thumping. Like footsteps pacing back and forth. Except there were no echoes. The sound was close, closer than it should have been without us seeing anything. Max clicked on his flashlight. It didn't work. None of ours did. "I don't want to go in there," Bree whispered. "We can't go back," Kyle muttered. "Not through the mirrors." He was right. With a deep breath, I stepped in first. My foot met solid floor. Then another. Then. Crunch. I looked down. Couldn't see a thing, but I felt it, something brittle and dry. Bone? Jules stumbled into me, grabbing my arm. I hear whispering. We all paused. Now that she said it, I heard it too. Faint murmurs, all around us, like 100 voices whispering just beneath the threshold of understanding. If I strained, I could almost pick out words, but they never formed completely. Then came the scraping. It started low, like something being dragged across metal. From the far end of the car. And it was coming closer. SCHRRKKK. SCHRRKKK. We backed away slowly, hands outstretched, feeling along the walls for the next door. But there were no handles. Just cold, seamless metal. Suddenly, the scraping stopped. The whispering died. I could hear Jules crying now, quiet and restrained. And then. Why did you come? A voice. Clear. Deep. Not from in front of us, but from above. We looked up. Something loomed just overhead, barely visible in the shifting shadows. Long limbs suspended from the ceiling, thin and unnatural, like jointed wires twitching in anticipation. One limb reached down, slow, deliberate. It caressed Max's shoulder. He screamed and bolted forward blindly. The door slammed open ahead of him with a hiss of air. Light poured in. We didn't wait. We followed Max into the next car, slamming the door behind us. He was on the floor, panting. It touched me, he said, voice shaking. It didn't grab. Just touched. We all sat in silence, catching our breath. Kyle looked up. We're halfway through the train. And it's not getting better. I nodded. No. It's getting worse. This car looked normal. Or at least, it tried to. Rows of green seats stretched ahead of us, some torn, some faded, but otherwise typical. Dust floated lazily in the light from flickering overhead bulbs. It smelled like mildew and old leather. For a second, we thought, maybe this was it. Maybe it was just a weird train, a prank, some elaborate setup we'd find out later was orchestrated by someone with too much money and not enough empathy. Then we saw the passengers. They were sitting in the seats. Motionless. Dozens of them. Heads bowed, hands resting in their laps, not one of them moving or breathing. Their skin had this waxy quality, like they weren't flesh anymore. They wore outdated clothes, suits and dresses from the 40s, some in dusty work uniforms with faded name tags, all untouched by time. I stepped closer to one. Don't, Bree hissed, grabbing my arm. Don't touch them. I'm not, just look at this. I pointed to a woman in a pale yellow dress. Her face was serene. Peaceful. But under the collar, barely visible, was a thin red line across her throat. That wasn't wax. That was dried blood. Kyle slowly walked the aisle, staring at the faces. They're all dead, he said. They've been here for decades. No, Max muttered. No, they're not. He was at the far end of the car, next to a small girl in a school uniform. Her chest was rising. Barely, but unmistakably. He turned to us, eyes wide. This one's still breathing. We crowded around, staring at the girl. She didn't blink. Didn't move. But she was alive. Then her mouth twitched. Only slightly. She whispered something none of us caught. What? I leaned closer. Her lips moved again. I read them this time. He's coming. The lights cut out. Every single passenger jerked their heads up in unison. Eyes open. Dead or not, they were watching us. Every last one. Then the girl screamed. Not like a frightened child. Like a warning siren. We ran. The next door didn't open this time. It was locked. Solid. No panel. No handle. Kyle slammed his shoulder against it again and again, but it didn't even budge. Behind us, the passengers were rising. Not stumbling like zombies. Not jerky like puppets. Smooth. Controlled. Their heads tilted in perfect unison. Their eyes stayed on us. Not vacant, aware. Max kicked at the door. Come on, come on. Then the girl, the one who'd whispered, stood up. And pointed. Not at us. Past us. We turned. A figure now stood at the far end of the car. Not a passenger. Something different. He wore a conductor's uniform, black and old-fashioned, like from a century ago. But his face wasn't right. It was like someone had tried to carve human features into melted wax. His mouth hung in a permanent, stretched grin, and his eyes, they were too small. Too deep. No whites. Just dark, wet hollows. He raised a hand. Not to wave. To beckon. The passengers began moving. Not walking, gliding. Their feet didn't lift, just slid across the floor, closing the distance slowly, steadily. Then the train jolted. The lights flashed red. And the door behind us burst open. We didn't think. We just ran through, Jules pulling the girl with us. This new car was dim, lit only by a pulsing red glow. There was a chair. A massive, old-fashioned operator's seat surrounded by broken controls and rusted levers. Screens lined the walls, flickering static, distorted maps, and pulsing red lines that looked more like veins than transit routes. We turned. The door slammed shut. Through the small window, the conductor stood staring in, motionless. He didn't try to follow. He didn't need to. Because the screens in the room began changing. One by one, they showed us. Not now, before. Max kissing his ex behind the school. Bree crying in her car, alone, at 3 a.m. Kyle, fighting with his dad. Me, something I hadn't remembered in years. A hallway. A scream. A locked bathroom door. And Jules. Jules was just, standing still. In the screen. Watching. I don't remember this, she whispered. Then her screen changed. The train. Us. Right now. Someone was filming us. Live. From inside the car. We turned in unison, scanning the ceiling. The red light blinked above us. That wasn't a warning light. It was a camera. The red glow intensified. It wasn't coming from the screens anymore, it was leaking through the seams in the walls, pouring from cracks in the floor like light had turned into blood. The girl, still clutching Jules's hand, pointed at the next door. It opened before we could move. Heat spilled in. A dry, smothering heat that felt like opening an oven. The corridor beyond was bathed in pulsing crimson, the walls slick and pulsing, almost organic, like we'd stepped inside something alive. We hesitated. The door behind us creaked. The conductor was coming. We ran. The red car wasn't empty. Not quite. There were things hanging from the ceiling, suspended by cords that looked like stretched veins. They swayed slightly, their outlines obscured by a heavy, reddish mist that smelled like copper and rot. As we passed beneath, I looked up. And saw faces. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Mouths sewn shut. Eyes open and twitching. Like they were watching through the pain. Trapped. A silent choir of the lost. Don't stop. Bree shouted. But Kyle did. He was staring at one of the hanging shapes. That's. He reached up. The thing opened its eyes. And whispered his name. He screamed and staggered back as the cords dropped the body directly in front of him. It crumpled, still whispering. "Help me, Kyle. Please. I remember you." We dragged him away, all of us now sprinting toward the door at the far end, the pulsing heat rising with every step. Behind us, the bodies began to swing. Not from wind. From something pulling at them. Something coming. We didn't look back. We hit the next door at full speed, and this time it wasn't locked. It wanted us through. As it shut behind us, I saw the red mist collapse inward like a living lung exhaling its last breath. The girl finally spoke aloud, her voice small and hoarse. "They feed the train. It won't stop unless we do something." We stared at her. "You've been here before?" I asked. She shook her head. "I've always been here." The next car was wrong in a way that made my teeth hurt. It looked normal, 2 rows of seats, gray plastic, overhead handles swaying slightly with the motion. But the moment we stepped in, the door behind us vanished. Not closed, gone. Smooth wall where it should have been. Max pressed his hands against it. No seam. Nothing. Like it was never there. "Look," Bree whispered. "The windows. They showed us. 5 figures, standing in the aisle, from a third-person perspective. Like security footage, but moving in real time." We waved, jumped, turned in circles. The reflections matched. Then they didn't. My reflection tilted its head. But I hadn't moved. Breeze blinked twice, slowly, while she stared wide-eyed at the glass. "Okay," Kyle muttered. "No mirrors. No reflections. No weird back-and-forth bullcrap. Let's just keep moving." But then the whispering returned. Same cadence as before. Only this time. It was our voices. I heard myself say something I hadn't spoken since I was 12, in the exact same rhythm. Max's whisper came next. A soft apology he'd once made after a fight with his brother. The car was repeating our regrets. All of them. A loop of private pain, echoing louder, clearer, until the whole room was filled with overlapping guilt. Jules dropped to her knees, hands over her ears. "Make it stop, make it stop, make it." The girl placed her hand on Jules's shoulder. The voices stopped. Dead silence. Then, in the silence, a new sound, a slow, deliberate knock on the window. We turned. Outside, in the reflection, our doubles had changed. They weren't mimicking us anymore. They were watching. And behind them, just barely visible, was a figure. Not the conductor. Someone else. Taller. Blacker. Its limbs were too long, and it moved like liquid shadow. It walked behind each of our reflections, one by one, resting a hand on their shoulders. And as it did, our real bodies grew cold. Like it was reaching through the glass. The girl stepped toward the end of the car and held out her hand. The door reappeared. "Come on," she said. We didn't argue. This car ticked. That was the first thing we noticed. A rhythmic, metallic ticking, like 1,000 pocket watches all counting down to something. The walls were brass, polished to a mirror shine. The floor was a grid of metal plates, and above us, exposed gears turned in slow, deliberate patterns, some the size of dinner plates, others massive and grinding like they moved the world itself. "It's like a clockmaker's nightmare," Kyle muttered, staring at the machinery. At the center of the car stood a large device, half control panel, half altar. It pulsed with soft amber light, and across the top were rows of dials, buttons, and 4 levers. Next to it stood a man. Or, what looked like a man. He wore a suit stitched from copper wire and watch springs. His head was a brass sphere etched with Roman numerals, and two hands, literal clock hands, ticked across his face, slowly rotating. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just waited. The girl walked right up to him. "They built you to keep it running," she said softly. The figure's clock face twitched. The minute hand spun once, fast. Bree stepped forward. "What is this place?" The man's voice wasn't sound, it was vibration. It came through our bones. "A machine built to carry regrets. You boarded with guilt. Now you ride with consequence." Max stared at the control panel. "What happens if we pull a lever?" The man didn't answer. But one of the screens behind him flickered to life. It showed a hallway. A door. A sign above it, "Exit." Our hearts jumped. Kyle stepped forward. "That's it. That's our way out." I nodded slowly. "One of these levers must open that door." Or, Bree said, "one of them opens something worse." We stared at the four levers. No labels. No clues. Jules reached out. We pulled together. One shot. Everyone hesitated. Then we placed our hands on the cold metal. The girl counted us down. 3. The gears overhead screeched into motion. 2. The lights began to dim. 1. We pulled. The car jolted violently. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The clock-faced man vanished, no sound, no flash, just gone. And then the door ahead of us slid open with a hiss. Beyond it, the hallway from the screen. And at the end, that sign again. "Exit." We ran for it. But the hallway wasn't empty. Something else had been waiting too. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. With every step, the exit sign at the far end flickered, closer, then further, like it couldn't decide if it was real. We kept running. Until the girl stopped dead in her tracks. She pointed at the floor. We all froze. Footprints. But not ours. Wet, black prints, as if something had walked through oil and dripped every step. They trailed from the far end of the hall, and stopped right in front of us. No prints going back. Just a sudden end. Like whatever made them had stopped, and was now watching. Max raised his flashlight. Something shifted in the darkness. A ripple. A shimmer. Then it stepped forward. It didn't have a face. Just a stretched, pale head with a hollow cavity where features should have been. Its arms were too long, ending in hands that dragged along the floor with broken, clicking fingers. And when it moved, it made no sound. It wasn't walking. It was gliding. Right toward us. "Back," I whispered. "Back, now." We turned, too late. Behind us, the door had vanished again. No seam. Just wall. The creature tilted its head. And then it screamed. No sound came out, but the pressure was instant, like air had been sucked from the room. Our ears rang. Bree dropped to her knees, clutching her head. Kyle fell back, bleeding from his nose. The girl didn't move. She stared at it. And whispered something I couldn't make out. The thing stopped. It recoiled. She took a step forward. "No," she said, louder. "Not them." The creature hesitated. Then vanished. No puff of smoke. No sound. Just, gone. The lights flickered. The exit sign solidified. Max bolted. The rest of us followed. We crashed through the door. And weren't on the train anymore. We stood on a platform. Old. Abandoned. Covered in dust. Silent. Then the girl turned to us. "This is where you get off," she said. We stared at her. "You're not coming?" Jules asked. She smiled, sad, distant. "I can't. I'm part of it." "What is it?" I asked. The girl turned back toward the hallway. "The train doesn't take you somewhere. It takes something from you. It fed. But it's not done yet." She stepped back. The door closed. The train was gone. We were alone. But not home. Not even close. It took us a long time to believe the train was really gone. No tracks. No lights. Just an empty platform stretching into darkness, surrounded by concrete walls scarred with mold and ancient graffiti. The air was still. Too still. "Where are we?" Bree asked. I walked to the edge of the platform and peered into the tunnel. It didn't end. There was no curve, no wall, just a black void that swallowed light whole. My flashlight barely pierced it. The beam stopped short, like the darkness was denser than the air around us. Max paced near an old bench bolted to the floor. "This can't be the same system." Monroe Station was half collapsed. "This place, this is like it was never touched." Kyle found an old map on the wall. It was blank. Just lines. No names. No key. And drawn in the corner, carved by hand, were 4 words. "You exited the train." Beneath it, in smaller letters, almost hidden by grime. "IT didn't exit you." Jules sat down, pale and shaking. "I don't feel right," she murmured. "None of us did." The silence here wasn't just the absence of sound, it pressed against us, like it was waiting. Listening. Then came the hum. Soft. Almost pleasant. Like distant singing through walls. We looked down the tunnel again. Red light. Faint, flickering. Getting closer. Max stepped back. "No. No, that's not possible." But it was. The train was returning. Not on tracks. Just appearing, its headlights slicing through the dark like knives through velvet. We ran. Off the platform, through an old maintenance door Kyle kicked open. We didn't question where it led, just knew we had to be anywhere else. The hallway beyond was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 of us to move side by side. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping in slow, rhythmic beats. Every few feet, another door. All locked. Until one wasn't. We pushed through, and froze. The room beyond was filled with mirrors. Hundreds. Stacked, hung, propped against every surface. Each one showed a version of us. Sleeping. Alone. In our rooms. Our cars. Our homes. Like we'd never left. Like the train had taken us without touching our bodies. "Are we dreaming?" Bree asked. I didn't answer. Because one of the mirrors blinked. Not us. Not asleep. It was the girl. Standing in the red car. Bleeding. Smiling. She raised one hand, and mouthed a single word. "Run." We bolted. No destination, just away. The mirrors began to shatter behind us, one by one, each explosion like a gunshot, echoing down the narrow corridor as splinters of glass hissed past our faces. With every crash, the walls seemed to shift. The hallway elongated, narrowed, twisted in impossible geometry that bent like muscle under skin. We were inside something living again. I glanced back just once. Through the broken mirrors, I saw the train. It wasn't chasing us in the physical world. It was in the reflections. And it was getting faster. Each crash sent a gust of freezing air into the corridor, and with it, a hum, a low, mournful sound that buzzed in our skulls like tinnitus, warping memory, stealing time. My feet felt numb. Bree fell once and Jules yanked her back up. We didn't even speak anymore. We just ran. Then suddenly. Light. A doorway ahead. Golden, flickering. Like sunlight. We dove for it. And emerged into a subway car. Seats lined the walls. Dust on the floor. No lights. No movement. Kyle turned in a slow circle. No. No. We were off. We were off. I looked at the windows. No tunnel. Just void. Black stretching in all directions. Bree ran for the door, slamming her fists against it. Let us out. It opened. Not outside. Not a station. Just another train car. Identical. We stepped through. So did it. A perfect loop. Train. Door. Train. Door. On the fourth car, Max stayed behind. He didn't speak. Just sat down. I think this is it, he said. I think we never left. We just convinced ourselves we had. The door shut between us. We turned to find the car different. Empty. No windows. Just rows and rows of mirrors again. Every version of us was older. Tired. Broken. Some were crying. Some were laughing, manic, desperate. One was just staring back at me, grinning. Then he mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. But I understood. You're not passengers. You're fuel. We stood frozen. Those words, you're not passengers. You're fuel, echoed silently in every reflection, mouth after mouth mouthing it back at us, like the whole car had been rehearsing the moment we arrived. Fuel. The train didn't just take people. It ran on them. Our fear. Our regret. Our pain. It fed the engine. Jules turned, pale as death. That girl, she didn't save us. She redirected us. She gave the train something new to chew on. Then we stop feeding it, Kyle said, stepping toward the mirrors. We break it. We shatter every one of these lies. Bree grabbed his arm. No. What if that's what it wants? What if every crack, every reflection broken, just makes it stronger? Kyle froze. She was right. This thing didn't move like a machine. It moved like a story. Like it wanted us to react. And we were playing along. That's when we heard the music. Piano. Soft, distant. A single melody threading through the noise. It came from the next car. We hesitated, then opened the door. Inside was one final room. At the center sat a piano, sleek, untouched by dust or decay. The girl sat on the bench, back to us, fingers moving over keys we couldn't see. She stopped. Turned. And smiled. You made it further than most. What is this place? I asked. She sighed. It was a train once. Now it's a loop. A memory of a memory. Something that got hungry and forgot how to stop. Bree stepped forward. Then let us go. You can, she said. But only one of you. That's the price. The air went cold. What? One stays, she said gently. The rest leave. The train always gets its fuel. We stared at each other. Someone had to stay. Someone had to feed the tracks. The girl pointed to the piano. Decide before the song ends. The music played again. Soft. Final. We didn't move at first. Just stood there, staring at the piano as that sad, looping melody threaded the silence like a countdown. Each note chipped away at our resolve. Bree turned away, tears in her eyes. I can't choose. I can't. I can't lose any of you. Max laughed, a dry, broken sound. You think we get to choose? This place already picked. Jules shook her head. No. We choose. Or we all stay. That's how it works. It feeds on indecision too. Kyle looked at each of us in turn. One of us has to make the call. The girl just kept playing. And then I stepped forward. I'll stay. 4 heads turned toward me. No, Jules whispered. You don't have to. I do, I said. And I meant it. This train, it fed on more than fear. It fed on memory. On the weight we carried and refused to let go. I'd been dragging something behind me for years. Something I never spoke about. Not once. The locked bathroom door. The scream. A choice I made when I was younger and afraid, and someone else paid the price. I'd never told anyone. Never faced it. And the train knew. It always knew. This place, it already had me the moment I stepped on board. The girl stopped playing. Silence fell. Then she nodded. The door behind us hissed open. Not to another car, to light. Real light. Pale dawn through fog, the sound of birds, the scent of dirt and trees. Bree grabbed my arm. Please. I smiled at her. Get out. Tell people. Or don't. But live. For all of us who didn't. They left one by one, slowly, reluctantly. Max was the last. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. Then he was gone. The door closed. I turned to the girl. She stepped aside. I sat at the piano. The keys felt warm. Alive. I didn't know the song, but I played anyway. And the train began to move again. They never told anyone. Not really. Not the full story. How could they? No one would believe that a subway tunnel swallowed 5 teens and returned only 4. No one would believe the truth, that the train still ran, under cities and time, a ghost track with no end, hungry and watching. So they said it was an accident. Urban exploration gone wrong. One friend missing. A tragedy. But they remembered. Every time they heard a distant rumble underground. Every time they saw their own reflection move just a little too slowly. Every time they closed their eyes and heard faint piano music, threading through the dark. They remembered me. The one who stayed. And well, I still sit at the piano. The train doesn't need tracks anymore. It drifts between places, between people. Sometimes it waits beneath an abandoned city. Sometimes it pulls alongside a person walking home late at night. You won't know you've boarded until the doors close, and by then, it's too late. It always starts the same. Fluorescent lights. An empty car. And the soft, steady hum of regret. But if you're lucky, if someone still remembers your name, maybe the train lets you off. Even if it's just for a little while. So if you ever find yourself on a train that wasn't supposed to exist, where the windows show things you shouldn't see, and the lights flicker like they're thinking, don't run. Don't scream. And if you hear the piano, listen. I'm still here. Playing. Waiting. For the next one. The end.